Have you ever felt like the more you question the world, the more distant you become from it? Like the deeper your thoughts go, the harder it is to connect with others? If so, you're not alone. Society has always had an uneasy relationship with deep thinkers, not because they are wrong, but because they see beyond what most are willing to acknowledge. From Socrates to Nietzsche to Alan Turing, history is filled with brilliant minds who were ignored, mocked, or even punished, not because they lacked intelligence, but because their ideas disrupted the comfort of the masses. But why does this happen? Why do those who seek truth often find themselves isolated? The answer lies in human psychology. The mirror effect: why intelligence creates distance. Think about this. When someone is physically stronger, we admire their power. When someone is wealthier, we may envy them, but we still recognize their success. But intelligence is different. When we encounter someone who thinks deeply, who questions what we take for granted, it doesn't just make us aware of their intellect. It forces us to confront our own limitations. And that makes people uncomfortable. This is called the mirror effect. The idea that deep thinkers don't just offer new perspectives, they hold up a mirror, reflecting the gaps in our own understanding. And human nature resists this. But why? Why does intelligence, more than any other kind of superiority, make people feel uneasy? Unlike wealth or strength, intelligence isn't just an external trait. It's tied to how we define ourselves. Our beliefs, our opinions, our understanding of the world, it's all part of our identity. When a deep thinker challenges that, it can feel like an attack on who we are. That's why, rather than engaging with complex ideas, many people instinctively dismiss them. They resist, not because they've considered the argument and found it lacking, but because accepting it would require them to rethink everything they know. This is why so many of history's greatest thinkers were outcasts. Socrates was sentenced to death for corrupting the youth of Athens, not because he was wrong, but because he made the powerful uncomfortable. Galileo was condemned for challenging the belief that the Earth was the center of the universe. Even more recently, visionaries like Nikola Tesla and Alan Turing were undervalued in their time, only to be recognized long after their deaths. This isn't just a historical pattern. It's something that still happens today. Deep thinkers in any field, whether it's philosophy, science, or even art, often face resistance, not because their ideas lack merit, but because they challenge the way people see the world. Why deep thinkers struggle in social settings. But this isolation isn't just about society as a whole. It's personal. Many deep thinkers find it difficult to connect with others on a daily basis. Not because they lack social skills, but because the average conversation thrives on familiarity, not depth. Most social interactions revolve around shared assumptions, common beliefs that keep discussions flowing smoothly. Small talk, gossip, entertainment. It's all based on topics that require little critical thinking. But deep thinkers, they see beyond surface-level conversations. They crave discussions that explore truth, meaning, and complexity. If you've ever tried to discuss a profound idea in casual conversation, you've probably seen this firsthand. People change the subject, laugh it off, or even become defensive. It's not that they aren't capable of understanding, it's that they don't want to. Because engaging with deep ideas requires effort. It forces people to confront difficult questions, and most prefer to avoid that discomfort. Psychologists have identified several cognitive biases that explain this phenomenon. The Dunning-Kruger effect. People with low expertise often overestimate their knowledge, while those who are truly intelligent tend to doubt themselves. This creates friction, because those who know the least often believe they know the most. Status quo bias. The human brain prefers familiar ideas over new, complex truths. Deep thinkers introduce disruptive thoughts, and most people instinctively reject them. The backfire effect. When people are confronted with evidence that contradicts their beliefs, they don't change their minds. They double down on their existing views. This resistance to deep thinking isn't just social, it's biological. The brain's resistance to deep thinking studies in neuroscience show that when people are faced with information that contradicts their worldview, the brain's amygdala, the part responsible for detecting threats, becomes highly active. In other words, the mind reacts to challenging ideas the same way it reacts to danger. This is why people often reject new perspectives, not through logical reasoning, but through an emotional response. And here's something even more surprising. Research from Stanford University suggests that people are more receptive to deep thinkers one-on-one, but more resistant in group settings. Why? Because in groups, social status becomes a factor. If someone feels outshined by an intellectual, they may instinctively dismiss or undermine them. Not because they disagree, but because they don't want to appear less knowledgeable in front of others. This is why intelligence can be isolating, not because deep thinkers push others away, but because their presence disrupts the social balance. The loneliness of being ahead of your time. Another reason deep thinkers often feel alone is that they are ahead of their time. New ideas are rarely accepted immediately. In fact, they are often met with hostility. Many of the scientific breakthroughs, philosophical insights, and artistic movements that are celebrated today were once considered radical or even dangerous. The French philosopher Voltaire famously said, "It is dangerous to be right in matters where established men are wrong." And that danger isn't just about external rejection, it's about internal doubt. Deep thinkers often struggle with existential loneliness, the feeling that no one else sees the world the way they do. This can lead to self-doubt, overthinking, and even imposter syndrome. And yet, despite this struggle, deep thinkers have shaped history. The very ideas that were once ridiculed are now the foundations of science, philosophy, and human progress. How to embrace your nature as a deep thinker. So what does this mean for those who think deeply? Should they stop questioning, stop challenging, stop searching for truth? But they must understand that the rejection they face isn't personal. It's psychological, biological, and cultural. The world values comfort over complexity. But deep thinkers, they thrive in the complexity others try to ignore. So if you're someone who thinks deeply, here are 3 things to remember. Find your tribe. While deep thinkers may be rare, they do exist. Seek out those who appreciate meaningful discussions, whether through books, online communities, or intellectual circles. Balance depth with relatability. Not every conversation needs to be profound. It's okay to engage in light-hearted talk while saving deeper discussions for those who are open to them. Embrace solitude as a strength. Many of the world's greatest thinkers did their best work in isolation. Use solitude as a tool for creativity and reflection, rather than seeing it as a weakness. The world may resist deep thinkers, but it also needs them. Progress doesn't come from those who accept things as they are. It comes from those who dare to challenge them. So if you feel isolated because of your thoughts, remember this: you're not alone. You're just ahead of the curve.